Coming up next on this live episode of Once a Duck.
Down there, our G baby in this case, backup right tackle, is going to have number 91 jersey on, so they don't have to report him as eligible. He's immediately eligible right here, and the defense isn't even thinking about him in this position because there's
all that and much more on this upcoming episode of Once a Duck.
Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
What is going on, everybody? You are listening, watching, checking out a brand new live episode of the Once a Duck podcast. As always, I am Sam Schmidt. Joining me once again, as he always does, folks, give it up for the great Nick Cody. Nick, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Well, thank you, my good friend Sam Schmidt. And whether you're listening with us live right now on YouTube or other platforms or in the future, we are hoping you are having a great night or a great day or whatever time it is. Just hope you're doing a lot better than most of America is right now, either upset about the Tyson Jake Paul fight or Netflix buffering. One of the two. But here we are the night before Oregon faces Wisconsin. We got to recap that Maryland game, sit here and answer a couple of your guys' questions, and we got to preview the big game tomorrow against the Badgers. And hey, what better guy to talk to about facing the Wisconsin Badgers than the first guy, one of the guys on one of those first teams to get a win against the Wisconsin Badgers here? Well, 3 for 3, but tomorrow will be the big deciding game. We want to hear what you guys are thinking about it, especially those of you that have made the trek out to Madison right before you get to bed tonight. Let us know what you're thinking down in the comments down below. Me and Sam will be taking a couple moments here to reflect and bring up a couple of those comments here and all your social media platforms. If you aren't already following us, please, we'd appreciate it. At Once a Duck on almost all your social media platforms, or for myself at Nick R. Cody, or my good friend here at Samuel101TS. That's where you can find us. And thank you for joining us. And if this is your first time here, man, welcome. Once a Duck is where we bring you up to speed with what the Ducks are doing this week during the season. And we usually bring you a bunch of different guests. And when we do these live episodes, I throw a bunch of invites out. Hopefully we get 1 or 2 bites. A couple people might want to come on here, talk a little Ducks about it. But before that, man, Sam, we just got to talk about this Maryland game that we just had, because there's a whole lot to break down, both positive and negative, before we were able to even preview this next game.
Well, and you nailed it right there with both being positive and negative. I think that this maybe wasn't exactly the game that some Duck fans thought it would be. There was a lot of talk beforehand about Oregon being able to come into this one and really just steamroll Maryland, not having to think twice about it. But, you know, suddenly at the end of the first quarter, it's 7-3. Took Oregon a drive with a big 4th down conversion to get those points. Suddenly, you know, it was feeling a little more uneven, if you will. And then this Oregon defense steps in and does what they've been doing all season. If over the next, 45 minutes of the game, they held Maryland just to 15 points, 8 of those coming in garbage time. The rest, it was just Oregon. Granted, at times during this game, I don't know what you saw, it seemed to me as if it was a little difficult for Oregon to get things started on offense at times. Maryland was doing a very good job keeping Oregon uncomfortable, keeping Oregon in those 3rd and long situations that are a bit more difficult to be dealing with at times. But as the game progressed, it was clear that Oregon was, to put it in boxing terms, like we've been all checking out tonight, they were really kind of leaning on the opponent, if you will, really bringing them into the bear hug, just putting that body weight on them, making it difficult to be able to do the things that they were doing to be successful, which had worked throughout the game so far. But credit to these Ducks. They were able to do what they needed to do. They were able to stay undefeated as it were, going into this week, currently 10-0. But Nick, I'd love to hear a little bit of what you saw in that game, what was really sticking out to you, and what Maryland was doing to kind of make things difficult for the Ducks.
Yeah, well, one of the things, again, and in my experience of the game, is the first half I got to watch live, and then I had to watch the second half later, which was not a great experience. At least getting to watch the score, I felt a little good being able to get a little bit of comfort there, and got to catch a little highlights on the cell phone. But it's always better being able to watch it live. So when I was watching that first half, one of the things I thought is, a lot of this is going to be blamed on the Ducks maybe not being up for this opponent. But the one thing I had to take into consideration is this is a Maryland team coming off a bye week that literally admitted their coaching staff that they'd spent that extra resources and time with their game plan for Oregon, and that watching the Michigan game just mostly confirmed what they had already built into their game plan going into this game. So you have to take that in consideration when a team starts like that and causes so much frustration. So, it sounds like a very homer opinion, and surprise, that's coming from me here at Once a Duck. But it's something to just keep in mind is that this was a Maryland team that knew they were going to play across the country, the number one team in the nation, and they had a plan that they thought, if they executed, could have won them the game. And you know what? The first half showed you potentially it could have, especially the talent they had at wide receiver. I think especially in just following and the limited bits I'd seen in Maryland going in this game, I really underestimated. Those are two NFL potential guys, definitely right there on the outside, and a good test for our defense. And overall, the outcome of the game, of course, I'm happy with. Get a couple big man scores, always happy with that. Big man, again, been calling for it a lot this season. How many episodes back I was saying we got to run that punt return again. Same thing with Casey Rogers, and it comes up, and what a great time. Jordan Birch out there, even with the injury, looking like a guy that definitely has experience as the point guard out there on the floor. I hearing about what an athlete he is after that play, especially, you're like, God damn, that's a special talent right there, and a very opportune time to bring that play back. The perfect kind of timing, and man, I just think overall, I'm really proud of this team, the way they were able to overcome a team that really sold out everything they had to try and stop this offense and get their playmakers the ball. And for, the first half there, they definitely had us nervous in a couple spots.
Well, and I'll tell you what, you mentioned those two receivers, and those were guys whose names came up when we were discussing this game for last week's episode. But yeah, Felton, first and foremost, was awesome. 7 grabs, 72 yards, had that 34-yarder that was big time. Also, Octavian Smith Jr., 5 receptions, 46 yards. He had a 21-yarder as well. Maryland, they absolutely do have talent on that offense. I didn't even really think Billy Edwards had a terrible game. He had 2 interceptions, but one of them was on a tipped ball that Tyshim was able to get under. The other was a phenomenal play made by Justin Jacobs diving over the middle. But beyond that, he had 206 yards. He was able to move around well. We mentioned that could be something that he was doing. 26 yards on the 9 carries. He was able to get out of trouble a few times when they needed him to. Maryland did a very good job, I thought, at least in that first half of just keeping Oregon uncomfortable. But you're right, they were making those big-time plays that are able to produce the energy-inducing moments in Autzen Stadium that really are able to get things going. We're going to go over a lot of those plays in tape time. I'm sure we'll see more than one Jordan Birch appearance during that segment. But for now, I kind of want to get more of your take on the kind of game it was. It seems like when you have teams that are going on these big, long win streaks, they're at 10 games right now. And believe it or not, this game actually reminded me a little bit of another game that you were a part of, Nick. It's a slightly different point in the season. The game I'm thinking of was a couple weeks later, but when Oregon played Arizona in 2010, it was a game with you were coming in 10-0, a lot of energy. Autzen Stadium's going. It's a late November game, and it's one that starts a little slow for Oregon. I think Darren Thomas had an early turnover in that game, but regardless, kind of a slow game that takes a little while getting started before Oregon is able to eventually kick it into high gear and take over in the second half. I don't know if that's the exact comparison you would make, but I'd love to hear how teams approach and how teams kind of react to this type of a game when it comes at this point in the season when you've been winning like they have been.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I think a lot of what this game had different from that is a lack of familiarity from both programs. With this being the first time meeting, I think there's just so much, because again, with Arizona, there is, and especially at that time, there was that building rivalry that kind of heated up and capped right around that 2014, 2015 era. And again, that lack of familiarity can create some weird things that happen in football games. And I definitely felt like we had a couple of those moments, and we were able to capitalize on a couple of those moments with them not really knowing exactly what was in, our bag of tricks. So again, that's another key part of this. And then just right now, again, we're having to adjust with some injuries. Okay. Not having Tez Johnson is a huge deal. That's like one of the best receivers in the country, somebody that completely takes a defense that had a great coverage and completely takes the air out of him, because you're able to find him underneath, getting him to wiggle underneath when everything else, all your other options didn't go through. And with this kind of offense, that kind of guy can make all the difference to get those guys on the outside even more open. So even though we've had a great contribution from a bunch of guys in Phil, in the middle there, both the tight end and that slot wide receiver position. But I also feel like ultimately out there, we're also replacing, trying to replace our most consistent and tenured offensive lineman in Marcus Harper. So when you're ever doing that with two really key studs on your offense, you're going to have some hiccups. And thankfully for Oregon, the way we've been recruiting out here, not only did we get Dave Iuli back, but, again, having Kavika Rogers over there, those guys are going to, again, as we saw earlier in the season, going to take a couple more reps to be able to gel at the same level that a guy like Marcus Harper, you can plug him in basically anywhere in that interior offensive line. And, you can't necessarily say that for some of those younger guys yet, but they're going to get there. Get them a little more game reps, and this is a great opportunity for them on the road to just show, especially when you're going to Wisconsin and what that is all about. As an offensive lineman, you got to take some pride in that. And I know when we played them, that was something that we really thought about is, man, you know what? They might eat more prime ribs at Lowry's than us this week at the Rose Bowl, but I guarantee you we're going to be the more physical offensive line, even if they might have 20 pounds per man on us. But we caught up. We did a good job trying to catch up before game day, but that's just, I think, one of those things that it might not be able to see it in this game, but hopefully it develops, because, again, 2 more November games, and November football is all about who controls the line of scrimmage.
Well, you know what, Nick? I think you mentioned a couple of things there that are very important that I want to get to. First and foremost, though, Slayer checking in on YouTube. The Slayer checking in with the Go Ducks. Go Ducks, absolutely. Had to mention that right there. The first thing you said that I really want to get into, though, Nick, you mentioned the necessity for change with the injuries, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Marcus Harper. You also mentioned Tez Johnson, which is the one that I want to really talk about here, because it seemed like, at least in that first quarter especially, Dylan Gabriel kept really wanting to have that sure thing underneath option available that just isn't there without Tez Johnson. You mentioned one of the best players in the nation, one of the best players, especially at being that guy for their quarterback, being that hot read, being that automatic, I know that I can get it to them if I'm in trouble, I've got this guy right here type of player. And I don't think it was really until at least later in that second quarter where we saw that starting to be developed. At first, it looks like, okay, he's trying to get it to Ferguson a little bit. Ferguson's having some trouble holding on to the ball at first. That's not ideal. Okay, we're trying to get it out to the running backs. All right, the running backs are having a little bit of trouble here. Okay, we're trying this now. This isn't quite working here. And it seemed like it took some trial and error for Oregon to kind of figure out what they were going to do and how they were going to be able to do it. I think in that second half, especially on that last touchdown that we saw, the one that was able to go to Evan Stewart, that was the exact type of play that we see Tez Johnson score on all the time. So it felt like it took most of the game to be able to figure out how to get that type of play into that type of player. From your perspective, what kind of goes into that process of being like, okay, this guy's going to fill this role, this guy's going to do that? And then when you're out there on the field, what does it really look like when a guy is more or less trying to find who's going to fill that role, and then when somebody tries to fill a role that normally isn't theirs but needs filling?
All right. When you say from my perspective, I immediately think two things. What am I trained to do, and what I'm honestly thinking now, somebody that's been away from football too long. So I think immediately just next man up. I mean, the guy that's been there, he's been in that position, he's been watching, he's got that experience. It shouldn't be too much of a rebound. Certainly with the wide receiver position or even, interior offensive line, you can find different positions to put them in to succeed, but you're kind of still like, it's limited. They're still going to be, they're not going to be able to just instantly bring some kind of new trait or talent to the field that they didn't show earlier this season. That's something you work on all off season, all that kind of stuff. Right now, you're just trying to maintain. But personally, now you ask my opinion now, I think just honestly do what the team did. When in doubt, trust your offensive linemen to score. That's I think that worked out pretty well. Maybe it's just me. Maybe we need a little more Wildcat Connerly. I don't know. Maybe it shouldn't just be a PAT thing. So yeah, the old football me tells you the honest truth. The new football Nick Cody that's been doing this podcast for 5 seasons now. He's just so ready to see offensive lineman touchdowns that that I'm just out here. So now I'm going to be screaming every time we get in the red zone, 13G baby right, 13G baby right. That's all we got to do right here.
Well, you know what? And I was going to save this for tape time, but we may as well get into this now. I can go find the video and stitch it in at some point if we need to. Is it just me, or did somebody say that this was coming in the Maryland game? Is it just me? Is it just me, or did a couple weeks ago, somebody who usually sits across from you in this podcast sit there and go, I could see it for the Maryland game. See it for the Maryland game.
You corrected my greediness as you tend to do. I'm happy to see it whenever. But the thing is, I loved even more, you follow up a touchdown with a 2-man or 2-point big man 2-pointer, and it's old zone read, man. And like just seeing Connerly pull it, I was so excited because especially I was hosting an open mic at the time. So I had multiple people texting me like, did you see that? Did you see that? So I immediately have to go wait till it's, on the social media websites, and I get a clip of it and go, I immediately like, I gave like a Yelp that somebody on stage thought was in support of them. And, I'm happy to lend that, I try to be supportive, but it was way too much. And I was like, yeah, you were great. Could have been joking about something really terrible, but I was like, oh, you're great. I just saw an offensive lineman score. I couldn't be happier.
Oh, man, and trust me, there were a lot of Duck fans that couldn't be happier. Speaking of couldn't be happier, I couldn't be happier. We're getting some more comments in here from Exploring with Ben and Sam. How the hell is the season almost over already? Ugh, I could not agree more. This was a college football season I felt like I was looking forward to for a couple of years. It felt like it was a long stretch, especially after how last season ended. Not saying we weren't happy with the Fiesta Bowl, but that Vegas trip wasn't something anybody wanted. So coming back from that, it felt like forever since we were able to have a good Oregon football season. And, man, it has been a great one so far. That being said, I am an Oregon football fan, so I'm going to reserve further comment until after the month of November.
Did you suggest, though, before we have to go back and use the magic of editing, did you suggest there that the Fiesta Bowl's in Vegas?
No. I said the Fiesta Bowl was great, but how things went in Vegas.
Okay,
Speaking of that Pac-12 championship.
Got you.
Yeah. I didn't want to be too much more specific than that.
All right, gotcha.
Too.
Okay, we're fine. That's fine. I was like, hey, that actually would be cooler if Fiesta Bowl.
Are you telling me it wouldn't be a Fiesta if they had the bowl in Vegas?
I'm saying that actually sounds pretty damn good because I get sick of that damn Arizona stadium. That's for sure.
You're about to open a can of worms you're not trying to here, but I'm over that stadium too.
Until they retroactively admit Dyer was down, I am over that stadium. So
I was just going to say I'm over any stadium that is so shallow with its seating. It's just I hate that it's so wide. You're so far away from the field no matter where you are. I hate that in any stadium.
I imagine that's the shallowness is a critique a lot of your girlfriends have for you and your personality too, Sam. So let's not.
They know I deeply care about what I care about, and what I deeply care about is this Oregon football team and getting through this podcast in one piece, Nick. Those are the things that I'm personally worried about, as always. But again, we got a couple more comments coming in. Don't worry, Ducks are going deep in the postseason. And you know what? I got to say, I am always a fan of that type of thinking. I am a fan of putting out those kind of positive vibes. We all know we would love to be able to see that from this Oregon team. Now, Nick,
I love that too. But again, to speak for the realistic Duck that we see out there all the time on social media, it is not, too late to kick off to panic right now and consider everything from here on forth being a trap game, because it is, whatever perspective you want. It really is, because Oregon is in a position right now where, even beyond controlling your own destiny, they have a little extra fail-safe on their destiny that a lot of other teams have already given up. So that's just one of those things that they have an opportunity right now that other Duck teams never have had before. Not only do you have right now an opportunity, an easy path to your conference championship and a potential postseason for the national championship, but you have the potential to trip along the way, not lose that, not win potentially that Big Ten championship game, and still find yourself in the position to control your destiny to the national title. That's something no other team has been able to say. And Oregon right now has an opportunity to capitalize on it. And I think they did everything they needed to do in that Maryland game to overcome their own mistakes to do it. And 9 penalties for 90-something, 95 yards, I'd have to guess, if I can just recall. That's not what you want right now this time of season. Something we definitely need to get cleaned up as we go into Camp Randall.
Well, and I think you absolutely nailed that. The penalties were something that I think was it wasn't that bad since early in the season. I think that was an easy early critique of this Oregon team, was that the penalties were a thing that had to cut down. Both the games against Idaho and Boise State, those were very clearly pretty severe issues. Being able to see Oregon, clean that up moving forward would be something that'd be huge. In this game, Maryland, they were 9 for 75 on penalties. Oregon, 12 penalties for 95 yards. 12 penalties is not the type of football the number one team in the nation should be playing any week, especially in a week where they need to keep things clean and play a good game against a team like Maryland. Nick, before we move on to tape time, because Lord knows that's going to be a long segment with the fun stuff that happened in this past game, before we move on to that, I'm going to ask you this question. Before you get the chance to ask me, what did you think of this game aesthetically? Oregon, they were obviously rocking the classic of most classic combos in this game: gold helmet, green jersey, gold from the waist down except for the green shoes. Maryland, they had some fun new things going on too, the kind of iridescent color-changing numbers and Terps logo, the fun whiteout, the red shoes.
I believe the people of my generation call that the Charizard holographic foil there on the numbering. That's shout out to the Paul brothers. But oh yeah, I got him, guys. Everybody live, you saw it. I got him. Got a nice little eye roll and a cringe there. But no, that's all I could think about. Every time, the lights flashed on it, I was like, oh, man, we got that holographic special edition uniform out here tonight. Tough thing to bring into Autzen and, try and flash off, especially when it's got that Under Armour logo next to it. But, hey, if only they had some kind of way to get Steph Curry and The Rock involved. That's the only thing about Under Armour that has any degree of success. So I had to say, I was underwhelmed with their uniforms, and God, we looked classic. I really love that look. It's especially compared to like it's such a juxtaposition to what we're looking at this week that we went from like satisfying all the old heads at Oregon and like, why don't they ever wear just green and yellow? It's like, okay, we'll do just that little white trim here, and then now we're like, all right, well, white and black, little of that true duck green on the number. Basically, I mean, all fairness though, we do the feathering right. It doesn't make any sense for a Terrapin. You don't have those turtle shells out there looking like a Charizard holographic. No, it's a Blastoise, you idiots. So,
well, I'll tell you what, actually, being as critical of uniforms as I tend to be, I appreciated that Maryland took a fun shot. It was interesting, and I will say I think this was a perfect for TV cameras type of uniform.
True.
Apparently, in person, this was one where it was like, yeah, it mostly seemed like it was red unless it was very quickly not, and then it was again. Whereas on TV, I will say the colors did absolutely change from the red to the yellow, which is very fun to see. Seeing like the dynamic, if you will, seeing one player standing there with what looked like bright yellow while the other one had bright red numbers was a lot of fun. And I will say, I think it's very interesting. A lot of Big Ten teams, they've been steering away from the more traditional looks, especially when going to Watson, and instead going with a more just plain white kind of look. Maryland, obviously, they usually have the red helmet or the pants, and often they'll interchange that with the black from time to time. Or even Ohio State this season rocking the gray pants, Michigan State or white pants, Michigan State rocking the white helmets. Seems like a lot of teams are coming in here and letting go of that drop of color just to be able to create a blank canvas for Oregon to play against, which so far so good. It has been working throughout the season. Also, and I hate to be the person to bring this up, but at least for that first half, man, Oregon really does like playing like the version of Oregon that wore gold and green when they wear the gold and green. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, this team, they love to come out and make at least the first half of games more difficult than they need to be when wearing that colorway that looks like so many Oregon teams that for so many years either made games more difficult than they needed to be, or games were just legitimately that much more difficult.
Yeah, that's fair. But again, with the penalties, I think that's a whole lot of it. And there's no uniform that, goes out there and gets you a flag. Now, you can avoid some penalties if you out there against a team wearing white, wear some white gloves, you can get away with some holding calls. But that's a old inside offensive line trick, not something everybody needs to know.
Wasn't it an old Belichick trick to always have your at least your linemen in your corners wearing the same color gloves as the jersey you're playing?
I fucking would. I would. That's for damn sure. I know. Well, I was also in the transition point where the offensive line finally got colored gloves because it was like, hey, fat guys, you guys just get the gray ones for every game. All right, cool. All right, specialty week, we might get some black gloves, but yeah, not till my sophomore year where we having some custom offensive line gloves out there, and even then, I don't even know if they're probably just the D-line gloves they were selling there at Nike at the time that they're just called them offensive line gloves. But big upgrade from the anybody that knows O-line gloves, man. They took a big leap right there in the 2010s, man. And they, like, when I was in high school, there was a couple but you had spend some good money, and those Nike ones were just trash because, like, all right, you're not catching the football. What do you need? Just a little padding on the inside of the thumb there and the palm. All right, cool, great.
From Slayer on YouTube, gotta say, not looking past Wisconsin. Good, we shouldn't be, but I am looking past Wisconsin. I can't wait to see the Ducks give a stomping on the 30th, buddy. I'm hoping we get the exact same thing. I can guarantee you, with a couple of weeks worth of Husky hate on the docket, you better bet that week's episode is going to be a doozy for you. But as for today's episode, we've got to move along. It is time for our tape time segment. And this fun segment, as we do every single week, Nick and I will be going over some of, if not the biggest plays from the past ball game. This one, of course, being the Oregon versus Maryland matchup. Right now, I'm going to be bringing up onto the screen some of the biggest plays from this past week. Nick, you and I, we will be taking a look at these big moments from the Oregon-Maryland matchup, starting right here with in the second quarter, 13-15 left. Oregon, they'd been doing a decent job on defense, held Maryland to 3 points in that first quarter, scored a touchdown themselves after a fourth down pickup. But Maryland was starting to move the ball pretty well right here, and it took this big play from Jordan Burch, finished by Johnson, to break open this gap a little bit. I'm going to play it. We're at half speed right now. Let's make sure of it. Yes, we are. We are at half speed right now. So while looking at this, Nick, why don't you just tell us really quick a little bit about what you're seeing as we play through this right here?
Yeah, right now we got 4-man rush with the single high safety, which means right now immediately you have a problem when you're looking right there where the safety would normally be. You've got one of your backers kind of tripping on his feet. That's always a little bit of a problem. But first and foremost, at least a good jump off the ball from our front four there. Right here, again, single high safety. And underneath here, coverage-wise, you always get a little nervous on that upper hash right there when you have two wide receivers in that alignment, and then your reaction from your DBs is a little bit off right there. That means like it seems like they're trying to figure out how they're going to pass this route tree off depending on these couple steps, and right now they have both their hips towards each other. So right there, like even as an offensive lineman, that just has me a little bit concerned for our defensive liability in the back end there. So as we just looking at the formation here, one back, we got two wide receivers into the wide side of the field, and then I believe a tight end and maybe two tight ends into the short side of the field. But as we let the play run, we can see that the pass rush has a chance of getting there, but right there, just an opportunity that your left tackle basically lost his footing, and as soon as you get pressed right there to that outside edge and get dropped, you're right there to be able to get a sack. But it's also, the sack fumble, but it's also a good thing because the back end of the defense right here feels a little bit uncomfortable. So whenever you're getting that single high safety look, you're really hoping you can get pressure right there with somebody in your front seven.
Well, I think the point that you bring up that is obvious, but also it just needs to get talked about a little bit more. This tackle absolutely loses this rep, but just watch the power with which Jordan Burch just crashes in right here. Just immediately throws that little move on him and then just drops that shoulder and just pushes that tackle so far out of position. Right now, he's looking down at the turf facing the opposite direction. He's looking out the back of the wrong end zone right here.
Yep.
Jordan Burch is just coming around the edge. And then as we saw in slow motion on repeat several times after this big play, I mean, just the absolute perfect timing to line it up right there.
Yep.
He gets the hit, able to land it, and then, of course, credit to Johnson, somebody that we've been talking about all season long for his productivity, able to scoop that ball, take it back the other way, and score. You got to love it, especially when a player doesn't let a play die. Instead, they're going until the whistle blows. No whistle there, so Johnson, he was going to pick that up and take that route right back to the house.
If we go back to the moment right before the sack, though, you were pointing out, this is the thing that if we have the if we're against a more experienced quarterback, or especially if we see Will Rogers like we anticipate we might again, this is a moment that, again, you have a guy like Burch and who wasn't able to play against Ohio State. He's a playmaker, but if he doesn't get there, go ahead, roll the tape right before he gets that opportunity. If you have a quarterback right here that isn't locking down, stop. If he can see right there, he has the sticks to his left, to his right, if he delivers the football now, or if you have, the Ohio State quarterback is just going to immediately see this gap between the center and the left guard and just step up and run. And he's probably going to be able to pick up a first down based on the posturing of our backer slipping on his foot right there. So when I see that, I'm like, against Maryland, this is great. A playmaker that is an NFL-bound player like Jordan Burch is going to make this play and make it into a touchdown play for the Ducks. But when you were in the playoffs, this is the kind of play that great teams can take advantage of. And what could have been, 6 points for you is a first down for them.
We'll finish it off here just one more time, letting the people see Jordan Burch finishing that big play right there, picked up by Johnson, returned over 50 yards back to the house. A huge play there for Oregon. A huge play that I think Oregon really needed at that time of the game. They were clearly in a stage where they were struggling to really put anything together. So seeing them be able to come out, make that kind of a big play right there when it mattered, it was huge. This next one we have coming up, it was another big play from this ball game. It was one, we mentioned it a little bit earlier on the podcast because, well, it was just that big of a play. It was worth bringing up. And that is going to be the big return. Not return, excuse me. The big fake punt from Jordan Birch right here.
Yeah, love this play. And again, I'd have to see it simultaneously with the Casey Rogers play, but it basically looks like very similar thing. And again, great directional snap and overall sell. And ultimately right there, everybody out there selling their blocks, but ultimately the ability right there, most athletes are getting tackled. I'm sorry. Especially anybody that's 6'5", 275 pounds, having been there, lived that life, telling you right there, yeah, you get your guys lined up, but it takes an athlete, a special kind of guy, to be able to take this and have the vision and the athleticism to be able to get out of one tackle and then find the open field and take advantage of it. Now, again, the only difference here is some of the running backs that have experience know, let the guys wearing the 60s and the 70s catch up a little bit earlier. Then it might be a touchdown here. But other than that, man, great play. He looked like a running back. Love to see it, and gets the whole team, all of Autzen Stadium. Now, again, right there, little back, just a little bit. You got to see your man number 70 and know he's not going to be able to help you there because he's gassed. If you would have just hung in there, taken that little side step, pivoted out, you would have set him up for a block that could have taken you to the end zone. But, hey, we got to teach him that in the running backs room. Not going to waste my time on that, Sam. We got to keep him over there on the D line. He doesn't have to learn all this, but a beautiful play, great special teams, and a huge improvement from, on the special teams, I think has really shown up this year versus previous staffs, I think is the best way to say it, is not just with trick plays, but consistency. But the only way you're able to have trick plays is that everybody's selling out on that Maryland team right now for the punt and punt coverage. And immediately when you pull this out and have an athlete like Jordan Birch back there, man, it's special. And this one's going down in Oregon history.
Well, and just a quick question I have as we let this play out. How much money did this play right here just make Jordan Birch? Just showing the athleticism, the ability to move north and south, the ability to move east and west, just showing the kind of pace, the kind of push, the kind of drive a guy like this has. That's got to be something that's going to mean something when it comes to draft season, when it comes to NFL players looking at the type of talent and the type of ability Jordan Birch brings to the table.
Well, I don't know if it's adding any more necessary money, but I do know one of the most important things of all the most successful NFL guys that I played with that went on is that they had highlight special teams plays. And that showed coaches, and not just when they were coming up young, but when they were stars of the team, they were still an integral part of special teams. That's the Pat Chungs, the Kenyon Barners of the world. And, oh, what a coincidence. Both of those guys, multiple Super Bowl rings. So Walter Thurman III. These are all guys that they popped even to their very last senior year because they were committed to being that key element of special teams. And when you're able to do that, even as a defensive lineman, man, that's huge.
I could not agree with you anymore, Nick. We've got a few more of these to hit, and I think the next two are going to be your favorites.
Oh.
Right here, we've got, you know what? Why don't I just let you make the play call, and then we can bring it up.
Oh, please do. I got to say, I can't remember the exact play call. I want to say in the recap video, they called it 13G, baby, right? Oh, man, what a play call right here. So before we even snap the ball right here, you're in the red zone. You're presenting them with a little bit of an issue here. So you've got an overloaded formation. So what you're having the typical right tackle do is flip over right there, and now you have two left tackles right there. Thank you, Sam. Right there with that mouse. Just point it right there at those dudes' asses. I've never been, sensitive about people seeing my ass down in that position in the line? Never. But yeah, stick that arrow right there and just show those people that don't know. You've got one extra bigger guy over there. But what you also might not realize is with 2 tight ends still, now both those guys on the line of scrimmage at the end are eligible because our wide receiver to the wide side of the field is off the line of scrimmage. So that means the guy right down there, our G baby in this case, backup right tackle, is going to have number 91 jersey on. So they don't have to report him as eligible. He's immediately eligible right here. And the defense isn't even thinking about him in this position because they're so much worried about, as you see him right here, they're lining up and trying to figure out how to line up to the overload because they're expecting us to run over there and, well, run the play because it's nice and easy peasy when the entire defense is more worried right there. Just nice little sell of the run block, and then everybody's believing you've got run to the left side, and as soon as the tight end shucks off the one defender, he's going to go for the pass rush as he thinks he should, and immediately eligible man downfield, and great, high pointed it, even though you're 6'4" or 6'5", but the best part, the breakdown right there. That's why you get a 90 jersey to put on over the top. When you have moves like that to break it down in the end zone, and you've got a thick 6 that you're going to bring on, man, you better be able to break it down in the end zone like that, man. I'm lucky I never scored a touchdown because the only thing I would have been breaking is not moves, but my own back trying to do something like that.
Well, and I think the point that we have to talk about, and there's a couple of things here. Number one, you're absolutely right. The way that they overload this left side and then just completely are able to make the play come out of the right is brilliant right there, especially all the eyes that were trained to the backfield, all the eyes that were completely locked in on what Oregon was doing in the running game. Because so far on this drive, it had been working. It had been working all season long, Oregon being able to use those overloaded sets to create scores. And then, you got to give credit to this kind of a grab, being able to go up like that. You mentioned the high point. He's a big guy. He's not necessarily used to it. That's not a guy who's going to run under a ball by any means. Goes up, makes the phenomenal catch. You got to love that. You got to love that for a record too. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure to put on a non-receiver right there, saying, "Hey, you're about to go catch the record-breaking grab for most touchdowns ever thrown in a career right there." That's a lot of pressure that's being put on you, I will say. And you know what? I think he did a pretty phenomenal job of handling said pressure. Oregon, they're able to stretch the lead right there. Anything else you have to say on that one before we get to what I'm sure is your favorite?
The only issue with that situation is who gets the ball there. The quarterback, you've got a lot of balls back in the day. This is the one time you might get that offensive lineman score there. So what would if I'm the quarterback right there and they gave me that ball, said, "Here, keep this for the record," that would be a nice stocking stuffer. I'd be sending a G baby over there. Just throwing it out there, maybe just me. But I was immediately thinking that when they were saying, "Oh, that's the record," I was like, oh, having the record with a guy that they're like, man, that's like the one touchdown you might get. Well, knock on wood, hopefully many more to come. But I would love if we start throwing tackle touchdowns all day.
I would love to see it too. And though I would prefer to continue to predict exactly when in the season they'll come. That's got to be my favorite part of this year so far. I might not have gotten a score exactly correct. It's about 2021-ish. I'll take that with me to the bank every single time. Right here, Nick, we've got what I'm pretty sure is going to be your favorite play of this whole series right here. Your favorite play of the day. Obviously, it's the 2-point conversion right here. It's a little bit of a wonky set, mostly because there's no kicker or holder in this extra point, Nick. Break down a little bit of what we're seeing right here.
Essentially, when you are doing anything in the extra point game, you're looking for how the defense tries to align to you and if they're prepared. And just looking at Maryland, and same as last play, you could tell from their confusion and just the fact that Oregon is all on the same plan, all in the same alignment, same as the last play. Just all you have to do is trust in your athletes and execute. And that's exactly what we did right here. Maryland was still trying to figure out, okay, what do we do in this scenario? Oregon was already locked in. This is what we're going to do in this scenario, and we're going to score. And that's no better way to do that than put your all-star stud left tackle right there in the backfield and just let him take it in himself.
Well, and take it in himself, he did. Let's take a look at that play right here. Immediately, you see Sadiq comes in motion. And then what's happening right here, Nick? What are we looking at?
Well, number one, we know immediately they aren't playing any kind of a man because nobody goes in motion with the back, right? So essentially, Connerly, I'm not sure what his read is on this play. It looks like the backside defensive end. But even if they were to read the front side, they could potentially see that the jet sweep right there was probably going to be open too, because these guys weren't necessarily manning up with everybody. So we're going to have a numbers advantage. So everybody going to the right here, and basically Connerly's got a read on that backside defensive end. So I want to say the left side defensive end, he just steps outside, makes it show. And even then, with just even commitment to that instead of the front side, immediately as being in the technical quarterback position, that's a pull. You're going to follow your blockers to the end zone. So basic zone read, just looking a little funky and having a jet sweep there instead of having the back in the backfield. So what we're looking at is the left defensive end right here. That's your read guy. And right here, immediately, especially in field goal mode, sometimes you're thinking that guy is going to crash down as hard as possible. But right here, his immediate response to the motion is widen out and try and take right there the back. And so that just leaves the Josh Connerly pull wide open. Right guard seals the inside, works his way up to the inside backer, and it's an easy path to the end zone.
Well, Nick, I have to ask you, and I think this is a question that probably only I'm wondering, but I am wondering nonetheless. This play is installed back in, let's say, 2011-ish.
Yeah.
Who's running that read option right there? Who are they allowing? Who are they putting in that position?
To be honest, probably either Mark Gasper or Weems, Darian Weems, former guest of the show. Not just to plug them, but those guys had the sneaky athleticism. And for Connerly, it's not even sneaky. I mean, I've been telling you guys since I saw this guy taking pass sets as a freshman at, what was the first or second scrimmage of that fall camp. Like, I knew from that point on, like, oh my goodness, I couldn't learn to take a pass set like that until Nick Reed graduated. So again, I think, and having to have tried to defend Mark in a alumni flag football scrimmage, man, he's got those funky Mormon moves, man. I would never hesitate to give him the football in that kind of situation.
Well, Nick, if we're going to look at guys who should have the ball in a certain situation, this last play is going to be a good example, because right here what we're going to see, a guy that we've been talking about a lot the last few weeks, we're going to look at a Noah Whittington run right here, specifically one that I think showcases not only Oregon's blocking very well, but also a little bit of what a guy like Noah Whittington brings to the table on his own. Right here, we can just take a chance to look at it, and then I would love to be able to hear your thoughts. Just a 2nd and 7 run right here. You see Ferguson gets in there to lead block. Good blocking up to the second level, but then after that, Noah Whittington just being shifty. Would love to see a little bit of what you're seeing right here.
Yeah, well, and what there's I can't remember necessarily what the terminology we used to have for a backside seal from the tight end coming from the front side. But regardless, terminologies are all interchangeable. What we do see right here is a strong right formation here with one wide receiver in the side, tight end to the right side, and the back offset to the left. This is very traditional Oregon football right here. You're going to see this look quite often. You're able to do a lot here, but when you have the defensive end on the backside aligned inside the tackle, you can do a lot. You can make that guy your read guy, or you can create a much better seal on the inside if you're able to bring that tight end from the front side and go and do exactly what they do here and have him either clean up any color he sees right there on the backside or fill up to the backside backer. In that case, backside backer takes himself out of the play. He finds color. We have a great crease right there, and have I Iapani, I want to say, on the second level at the middle linebacker, able to just get enough separation and a crease that, again, you end up just following your blockers initially and then taking that one cut, which Noah is a great one cut back, where he's able to find that one spot and cut against the defense. And their pursuit angles they're not able to catch him until he's already got the first down.
Well, and I think this run right here showcases so well something that we've been saying on this podcast and that I've been saying throughout this entire season, really. And it's just how different these Oregon backs are. A guy like Noah Whittington, he is so dangerous once you give him the ability to be. You see the kind of blocking right here up front. As you mentioned, Ferguson's able to come around, find that white jersey, get a good hit there, create this crease. Creases like this are exactly the type of blocking, the type of plays Noah Whittington needs to have for himself. Once these are made available, he's the kind of guy who's always going to fill that crease, always going to be able to pick up some speed going through the hole, and then is able to make a bigger run out of it. Nick, overall, this was a game where maybe not every scoring play was the most exciting and tape review worthy, but there were huge moments from throughout this entire game. I think I know what your favorite's going to be, but of those ones we looked at, what's your favorite and why?
Oh, man. I mean, easily it's got to be just the two big man touchdowns for different reasons. Two big man scores. Touchdowns got to, get the leverage because it's worth more points. But if we were to run essentially in some form of the Wildcat with Connerly and it wasn't a 2-point situation, that would have taken the cake easily because that's just awesome. I love it. And then we've seen a lot of interesting, setups for trick plays where they weren't necessarily trick plays. They're kind of just basic plays. Like when I say that, it's like, you line up for the swinging gate and you run something kind of like a basic pass play or what we used to call ninja, where you'll leave the center there or maybe the guards, but the tackles and guards split out. But just overall, when you have basic plays that you execute with some of the best athletes on your team, the Jordan Birch play, the Josh Connerly play, it's awesome because it shows you those guys are so invested in the team right now and the success of the team that they know their job. You're reliable and can trust them to, do their job and study each week. But they're studying what those other positions are doing too, like there's that ability there to take that kind of coaching too. And so when you're able to understand a zone read just as well as your backs or your quarterback are and sit there and have the confidence to do that in a 2-point scenario, I just love that because that's the same kind of encouragement Coach Tom Osborne and Coach Greatwood had in our PAT team. And it's great to see that back at Oregon and alive in spirit.
Well, alive it is, and I love the creativity coming from this Oregon team. I love how much fun they're having out there. When you just watch the Ducks versus them every week, you see exactly how exciting this team gets playing together, playing for each other, how excited these coaches are for every single game. Speaking of every single game, there is another one on the docket for this coming weekend. The Ducks, they take that show on the road one more time, at least for this regular season, traveling to Madison for a matchup with the Wisconsin Badgers. Obviously,
you know what I love about that? First,
what do you love about that?
We get 3 straight weeks of UW Hate Week.
Ooh, you're not wrong about that. You're not wrong. That is
a little new.
You are technically correct.
Yeah, I know my alphabet. Shockingly.
You know what? At this point, it's all positive signs. They're all positive signs. All the cognitive, it's all good. Those are all things we want to see, man. But seriously, this Oregon team, they're playing Wisconsin. This is a 3-3 record all time between these two programs. Oregon, they've won 3 of them in a row. The last 2 happen to be pretty important games. Those were, of course, Rose Bowl matchups. I think we were both at least that last one. I think you might have been at the last 2, if I'm remembering correctly.
I believe I was at the last 2, but yeah.
I believe you were at the last 2, if I'm remembering things correctly, Nick. But let's just talk a little bit about the Wisconsin Badgers, what this team is, who they are. Obviously, the Badgers, we know they are maybe maybe it's not fair to say, but I'm willing to say this is a Wisconsin team that does a decent job of looking like Wisconsin teams of historical note. This is a Wisconsin football team through and through. Sometimes when you get new head coaches, they change the dynamic of what teams are. Obviously, 10 years ago, nobody looked at Oregon as a defensive powerhouse. That's something that's changed with time and with the progression of coaches and such. Wisconsin's still kind of Wisconsin a little bit. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be strong in the trenches. They're going to try to make your life difficult on defense. I don't know how much of this year's Wisconsin team you've watched, Nick, but just in general, tell me what comes to mind when you think Wisconsin football.
Man, the Wisconsin also, especially over the last couple of years, and Luke Fickell taking over, especially coming from a playoff scenario in Cincinnati that he was leaving, you really felt like potentially he had the ability to take a program like Wisconsin and get them ready for that. But if anything, it feels like, looking at it, this is one of the first years that they're right now looking and hoping just to get bowl eligible, which for Wisconsin is crazy because I feel like they have not missed a bowl game since the early 2000s. I want to say 2002, 2003, something in that time frame. But I can't remember them not being in a bowl game. And this is one of those seasons where they're getting a little nervous. It's getting down to it. Ultimately, they came into the season thinking that Tyler Van Dyke was going to be their quarterback. And I think over the past couple seasons that, again, you're not expecting a Wisconsin quarterback to go out there and throw for 400 something yards and 5 touchdowns. It would be nice, but you're usually expecting the upfront offensive lineman to keep him protected, safe, let him manage the offense, and then have a plethora of running backs to stuff it up the middle. And I think that's just something they really haven't had. And then defensively, they've always kind of had like that bell cow linebacker right there in the middle, whether he was a highly recruited guy or somebody they just found out there in Wisconsin that grew up a Packers fan. They will just always find and develop those guys. And right now, it just feels like Wisconsin just isn't quite on the same level now that college football has become essentially, a process where you can, for 1 year, completely renovate, change your team with the transfer portal.
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. This is we're at a point in the sport where you can make those quick changes rather quickly. Although I will say, looking at things, I think you're exactly right when you bring up Fickell and his relationship here with Wisconsin, just in that they haven't had the type of success that I think a lot of people were expecting and looking forward to. Granted, those Cincinnati teams, those were extremely talented teams. They had a lot of guys, some that just come to mind immediately. They had a couple of shutdown corners with Garner and with Kobe Bryant, both NFL players on that roster. Also, Desmond Ridder was throwing the ball everywhere for them, doing a really good job playing quarterback. Since Fickell's gotten to Wisconsin, since he's been in Madison, this is his second season, 7-6 last year, currently sitting at 5-4 right now. I don't know if that's exactly where Wisconsin fans thought this would be heading.
No.
Look, it's only year 2, granted, but still, you expect to see some kind of a pickup. 7-6, all right, that's your first year. You're getting into the program and figuring things out. Okay, that's fine, I suppose. We can talk about that. Being 5-4 this season, though, and when you look at that schedule, you look at that record, they're winning the games that, they really should win. But the games where they're not favored, they're kind of getting their ass kicked a little bit, if I'm being completely honest. Wins over Western Michigan, okay, and South Dakota State, okay, sure. As well as you beat Purdue, you beat Rutgers, and you beat Northwestern all in conference. Gotcha. That's what Wisco should be doing, frankly. You play Alabama, ranked number 4 at the time, 42-10 loss. All right, it's Alabama. You play USC, who at the time was 13, but we've seen what's happened to USC since then. 38-21 loss. Granted, it's your first trip all the way out to the West Coast. All right, I'll give it to you. 28-13 loss to Penn State. That was a close game throughout most of it. That was a battle. All right, sure. Penn State got a late score to make that look like more of a stretch than it was. Their last game is the one that really gives me some concern. A 42-10 loss at Iowa. That's not good.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with UW teams and giving up 40 plus to Iowa. It's not something you're supposed to be doing.
No.
Granted, this is a team that has now had a bye week, and now they have Oregon coming into town. The absolute perfect prove-it opportunity. You have to imagine that's what Wisconsin's going to want to do in this ball game. They have some players that are capable of doing that. Has there been anybody you've seen on this roster, anybody you've seen within the Badgers program that you think could be a big problem for this Oregon team?
No. But I did want to say, I wanted to point out where I did have my first concerns with Luke Fickell. I feel like I was in Eugene. I can't say one of those September games last year, but I feel like I was at Rennie's, and I remember somebody told me, hey, did you know Wazoo's beating Wisconsin right now?
Oh,
And I remember thinking at the time, like, okay, all right, that makes a little bit of sense, but I think it ended up like 31-22. And I remember not only at the time thinking Cam Ward is a problem, I remember thinking at the time Wisconsin has problems. Both of those seemed long-term to like look very, very true coming into fruition this season. So just thinking back to that is where, again, some of those profound losses, again, like talking about Iowa, that's one that I imagine if you're a Badgers fan, that was a tough pill to swallow.
And at least for that game, you can make the argument, it's his second game ever as our coach, figuring it out a little bit, trying to get things together. But I don't think you're wrong. That's a solid diagnostic point, a solid place to be able to mark off things.
I don't know if it's diagnostics. We leave that to you, which is why you're going to have to tell us, Sam, what are the players that we're actually going to have to be looking at this week that I can't tell you who I'd be worried about because I'm just not.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Braden Lockey, he is their quarterback, of course, 117 of 206 attempts on the season. He has thrown for 1,418 yards, 56.8% completion percentage, and 8 touchdowns, as well as 8 interceptions. This is another game. We said it before the game last week. Oregon, they should be able to take advantage with that secondary a little bit. I say that just with pause because I don't know if you've seen, Nick, I'm pulling it up now just to get a good view of it. Oregon's secondary, for as talented as they are, for as lockdown as they are, for as shutdown as they are, haven't had a ton of interceptions this year. There have been interceptions had on this team. There have been players that have gotten them for sure. Johnson's got a couple. The other Johnson's got a couple. But neither of those guys are true corners.
Yeah.
Whether it's Muhammad, Reed, Manning, not a lot of corners getting picks this week. I'm going to say that changes.
Ooh,
I'm
big
going to say
prediction
that
time.
changes on the road this week in Wisconsin. The only, and I mean only way I see this game being a problem is if Oregon really, they're getting beat on the ground in the first half. That opens things up for Wisconsin through the air in the second half. Whereas what I hope happens is that you get this Oregon team finding themselves in a comfortable enough position that they're playing against a version of Wisconsin that has to throw the heck out of the football. By the way, the Horn Dog one commenting as we say this, Ducks by a mile. You got to love that. You got to love that confidence. I always love being able to hear that. And I truly hope that that is something we get to see this season.
I'm more of a kilometers guy, but
when I looked at, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just more of a kilometers guy, but yeah.
I guess you are, because I'm looking down this list right here, and I'm seeing, as I said, Tysheem Johnson, he's got 3 picks. Brandon Johnson's got a pick. Beyond that, Leal and Alexander, backup corners, each has 1. You're able to have Nico Reed. He's got 1. Besides that, linebackers with the rest of the picks. I'm saying this is the week, I think. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say exactly who, but I'm saying I think a corner's able to get a pick in this game. I think Oregon's able to create some turnovers in this game, but this will be the opportunity to do so. If Oregon is struggling, well, it's because Tyree Walker has become a problem. 142 carries this year. He has 676 yards along of 55. But, and what I've got to say is probably the most concerning aspect of this, 10 touchdowns. So this is a guy who is scoring week in and week out without a doubt. Honestly, the backup back, also all right. Yasameli, he's got 2 touchdowns, 274 yards. But this is Tyree Walker is going to be their main back. He's the main one you're going to be seeing causing problems there. Now, receiving wise, it's pretty well divided right here. You've got 4 wide receivers, each with 2 touchdowns so far in the season. Anthony II, Pauling Williams, and Kakahuan. Those are all guys who can be an issue out wide. You got to be able to look out for all of them. Maybe not the exact type of Sunday talent that you saw from those Maryland wide receivers, but still definitely a group that can go out there and do their best, go out there and create some plays, go out there and make some things happen, especially a guy like Anthony II, 443 receiving yards, a 63-yard long. He's averaging 18.5 yards per reception. He's going to be somebody you definitely have to look out for a little bit, but Will Pauling, Will Pauling, he is their leading receiver so far this season. Number 6 with 40 receptions, only 2 touchdowns. You know he's going to want to be able to add to that. Nick, do you want to say anything, or should I just jump right into the defensive guys that they have who are putting up numbers this year?
Go ahead. I'll wait until you're finished.
All right. Well, along that defensive line, number 1 guy you're going to have to look out for, at least if you're asking me right here, it's going to be a Kurt Neal. He's only got half a sack on the season, 22 total tackles, but big interior defensive lineman, the kind of guy that Wisconsin's going to need to have stopping the run, type of guy Wisconsin has historically had. If you're looking for who might get in there and cause a sack, it's going to be Christian Aligero. He's got 3 sacks so far in the season. The Wisconsin team in total don't have a ton. They have 14 total sacks coming into this ball game. So, they get there. They get there about 1.5 times a game, but it's usually going to come from a variety of places. Jemai Thomas, he is their leading tackler this season with 52 of them. Hunter Wooler, their safety, he's got 51 coming up right behind him there. It's a Wisconsin team also. They've only forced 3 interceptions from their opponents this entire season. They've also recovered 7 fumbles. So it's a team, they're creating about a turnover a game-ish, about a sack and a half a game-ish. But beyond that, not doing anything too terrifying, at least if you ask me, along that defensive front.
Yeah, well, what's always terrifying to me, Sam, is when we get to about an hour of recording, no matter what happens, even if it's out of the way the run sheet looks, you're always going to start getting in that prediction mode. So, it's a good transition. I just, wish we would have kept the cornerback interception prediction closer towards our actual predictions. And just a tease for all our fans that are listening live right now, I want to know right now down in the chat what your prediction is. And if you're listening in the future, please let us know right down there. If the game has already been played, well, it's too late. But if it's before the game, let us know what your prediction is. Afterwards, great. We don't believe you. But before, good time. So before kickoff tomorrow at 4:30 Pacific time, get your comments in here on this video right here. And Sam, I don't know how much you've been thinking about your prediction, but the one thing I have been thinking about is there's such an interesting kind of dynamic here for Oregon fans that are traveling to this Madison game. Now, I've already seen a couple posts on Twitter, some folks I'm worried about trying to keep up and drinking with these Wisconsin fans. That feels like a trap to me. Way more than this feels like a trap game, guys. If you're going out there to Wisconsin, please just remember, these people are experienced drinkers. If just because you think you're winning the game tonight doesn't mean tomorrow the scoreboard isn't going to show differently.
Well, and folks, we already have some predictions rolling in here. If you're watching this live, if you're one of the people checking us out, drop your predictions below. I'm going to give out their predictions here. If anybody gets this exactly right, if anybody's close, they're going to get a shout out on our next episode for sure.
I might have to. I'll reach out and we'll send them something from Once a Duck. If anybody gets it
If anybody gets, that's a good one to have. If anybody gets this right throughout the season, and you comment that correct score either on Twitter, X, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever we do our social media, on Blue Sky apparently. Shout out Nick for getting that started up.
Maybe a giant ducky or something. I don't know. I've got plenty of stuff lying around. Maybe you need an O chain in your life. Maybe we get you one of those. But yeah, if you get it right, basically we'll reach out to you. We'll figure out some kind of a sweet, at least compensation. Then we'll take all the credit for it.
If you get this prediction right at any point throughout this season, you get leftover crap from Nick's place.
Hell yeah, exactly.
So we have already a couple rolling in. The Horn Dog one on YouTube, 45-10, Oregon. That's a prediction that I appreciate the gusto of. I'm not sure this Oregon team is capable of scoring 40 against another Big Ten opponent, but it's a prediction that I do love to see. The Slayer on YouTube. By the way, thank you to everybody who's been participating throughout the night. The Slayer's been participating for sure. We appreciate having you in here. 38-17 Ducks. That feels a lot closer to the kind of score I'd be given for this game. Not exactly the one I had in mind, but definitely actually pretty close to what I had envisioned for this ball game. Without any further ado, Nick Cody, tell us your prediction. Tell us some keys to the game as well, how you see this one turning out for the Ducks.
So blatantly, before I did any research and was thinking about the team and what I wanted from a bounce back from this team, I kind of thought this defense might be pitching a shutout in this next game until I realized that UW will be the second of 3 straight teams the Oregon Ducks face that have a bye week to prepare for them. That's another huge thing. I think we saw it, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, a huge factor that I think gave Maryland a little bit of an advantage versus in comparison with not having a lot of familiarity with this team. And this Wisconsin team is one that I can't say this program has any familiarity with. Now, previous programs may, but not this current program. So for those of you that understand what I'm saying here, you speak the language. It's a different era, different coaching staffs. And right here, what I have to see in this game is not only us taking everything on the road, same way we did against Purdue, same way we did against Michigan, but also kind of just bringing that little extra oomph. Now, I know there was a lot of people anticipating this game might have a little November, Wisconsin, Midwest weather. It's not looking like that. In fact, it's going to be probably nicer weather than I'm going to get here in Seattle. Maybe even better weather than they're going to get there in Eugene. It looks like or mid-50s. So this game isn't going to be the, snowy tundra football game a lot of people kind of hoped late Big Ten football travel might be. But you know what? This is still going to be one of those games that has the potential to be a sloppy football game. And what I want to see from these Oregon Ducks is for it not to be on their end. Clean up the penalties, learn from what we did last week, keep it under 5 penalties. That's my prediction. If we keep it under 5 penalties, I predict we win by 21 points. So if we don't, I don't even want to talk about it. But if we keep it under that, especially as I always say, procedural pre-snap penalties, got to avoid those at all costs because they're just unnecessary. If you hold somebody, if you save your quarterback from a big hit because you got to just bear hug a man, I know better than anybody. Sometimes you just got to do it. But the thing is I see these Oregon Ducks coming out, defense continuing to play solid, put pressure on the quarterback and make them uncomfortable. But I also see, again, would love a nice cornerback interception, but I see us keeping the Wisconsin Badgers to 13 points. 1 touchdown, 2 field goals. The Oregon Ducks, on the other hand, right here, I have us coming out 38-13. So trying to keep it within kind of those averages that we've seen instead of my usual weekly prediction of us finally getting in the 40s. I'd like to see it, but this week I'm just going to go 38-13. What do you got, Sam?
Well, Nick, I appreciate you're finally being willing to observe the pattern that we've been forced to stare at these
Watch
many
us score
weeks
45 this week.
You think so? You think this is the week?
If I jinxed it, probably this would be the time.
See, I really think if we're going to see a big scoring output, it's going to be a couple of weeks from now. But that out of the way, that not in our minds right now, because what we're worried about is this Oregon-Wisconsin game. Now, Nick, I always love to say, and I always like to think about the fact that, I don't I love everything uniform related. I don't often think it has effect over a game. But what I will say is that we are going to be seeing one of our best uniform matchups of the year, period.
Yeah.
You've obviously got Oregon pulling these bad boys out. A uniform combo that I think everyone's excited about. The chrome face mask on the black helmet. A touch that even I felt was worthy of pulling out on occasion.
Hey, I went with the black alumni hat with the white.
I love it. I love it. I love that look. And what I will say is Wisconsin's also coming to the table dressed pretty fine in this game. They're going to be rocking the red pants look, which isn't typical for Wisconsin, especially at home, but they'll do it for a big game. They're going to be doing it for Oregon.
A little too much midriff there for me.
I know you're not one for the crop top football wise, but
unless it's me, man, I'll whip that out right. No, I don't want to get us banned here on StreamYard or YouTube or any of the platforms you're watching us. So I'll keep my shirt down for right now. But yeah, not a great look, but yeah, okay, cool. It's better than their fans are going to be dressed like candy canes. So at least
it's a red out. It's a red out, Madison. They should be in all red. I'm sure there'll be plenty of white. They should be in all red. Oregon fans, wear black. I don't know if you heard that they switched things up this week. Wear some black for that one. But anyways, taking this all back around to the point of an actual prediction, I think both of these teams are going to come out. They're actually going to play some good football. I think this is going to finish 35-20. I think Oregon's able to win this by a couple of scores. Maybe they give up a later touchdown to Wisconsin to get it up to that 20-point mark. I really do think that this is going to be the type of game where Oregon, they're able to get out there. I don't want to say they dominate the game, but unlike last week, they're able to control time and possession. They're able to run the ball. They're able to do the things necessary to go out, get a gritty Big Ten game. Oregon, they're the only team in the Power Four that has had to play 8 consecutive conference games week. The only team that's had to do that. Everyone else has gotten a bye somewhere in there. Oregon's bye, it's after this game. If you can get through this one clean, the world is your oyster. 35-20. I think Oregon gets this win. And yes, I think we see a pick from a corner.
Well, and I'm glad you kind of can get to this point in the season and just break it down, because I remember looking at the schedule, and especially when we got to that UCLA week thinking, oh, we're done with bye weeks. And I remember thinking at the time, well, I don't want to say anything now, knock on wood, jinx it, but this is really everything right now to this moment's kind of culminated this. And whatever Coach Lanning's message is to the team this week, I'm really excited for not only it to play out on the field, but hopefully for all of us to see it in the Ducks versus them video next week, because, man, they've just got it just on this pathway. And I've been trying to explain to a lot of people that ask me, oh, is Dan Lanning doing something super brand new to Oregon? And I'm like, I mean, maybe individually message-wise, but I remember the same things that my 4 years under Chip were like, and it felt like every week he was able to find a message that connected with the team and the guys he brought in. And even more than ever, it not only has the back of everybody right there in the HDC complex, everybody on the University of Oregon complex, but finally the entire college football playoff schedule and everybody that's making these rankings is finally seeing the work that's been put into this program for so many years. And now, man, just time for all these guys and all the talented individuals in that room wearing that uniform to just take advantage of it, have fun, and go out there and show everybody why you're the number one team in the country.
Folks, you heard it here. As always, like, share, review, subscribe, do all of that stuff. Right now, if you're watching us live, make sure you are following us on X at Once a Duck, YouTube Once a Duck, Instagram Once a Duck. What's our blue sky, Nick? I don't even have it yet. What is it? It
is at onceaduck.bsky or whatever the end up. It is you just search Once a Duck, always a duck. You'll be able to find us there on the usuals. And man, I'm fired up. I want to get out there and play some Beaver right now.
Man, I got to figure this out by tomorrow morning. There you go. I knew you were going to get there. Road in the start with the B. I knew we had it. I got to figure out whether I'm going to get on that app or not by tomorrow. I might have to, just so that I have another place to go blast off some Oregon football thoughts and feelings.
The flocks migration has been great. I know that even with the fight going on tonight, most of my feed has been Ducks and just anticipating this game and, feeling out the new app and not having any of the BS ads or any of that in there has been the nicest thing for me. It's just literally, if I'm not following you, I'm not going to see it unless somebody retweeted it. So that's been my favorite part so far, at least, and hopefully a great way for us to directly engage with our fans still.
Well, folks, go follow our Blue Sky account, follow everything else, follow him at Nick R. Cody. I am Samuel101TS. Folks, whether we have a bye-week episode next week or not, I can promise you we will have a huge Husky Hate Week episode, the type of episode that we envisioned when we first started this podcast. There's going to be a lot going on. We hope you are there for it. Besides that, though, thank you for listening. As always, like, share, review, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Nick, let them know anything else they need to before we get out of here.
Just want to thank you guys. Make sure you're already subscribed. Comment down below. Let us know how you found us. And here's to getting an extra 2 weeks of UW Hate Weekend, technically, if you want to abide by it. So joining us. No, we love our Wisconsin fans and friends, but tomorrow it's on. And then the week after, hopefully, if we don't have a full episode, would love to just get another live and hopefully get a guest or two on here to commentate just on the season and what this UW rivalry has meant and what it really means going forward in this Big Ten future. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us. Hope you tune in and go back and check out previous episodes, guys. Believe me, they don't suck as much as you would think watching this one. No, they're much better usually because we pre-record. But this wasn't bad for live. Thanks again for all of you joining us. And thank you, Sam, for setting it up. And as always, once a Duck, always a Duck.